The lights at the big house in Town are burning late into the night, but the cameras aren't rolling anymore. For nearly 2 decades, you watched a spectacle of family unity, a carefully curated image of a patriarch leading his massive brood toward righteousness. But that show was canceled. The brand is toxic. And most importantly, the cash flow that greased the wheels of that massive machine has dried up. Now, Jim Bob Duggar is aging. His grip is slipping. We aren't watching a family reunion anymore. We are watching the prequel to a vicious, high-stakes probate war. The question on everyone's mind is no longer who is courting whom, but rather, who gets the keys to the kingdom when the king is gone? The answer is already tearing the remaining family apart. We are looking at a battle for the scrap heap, a fight not for millions in royalties, but for the liquidation of assets in a crumbling empire. Before we dive into the secret land sales, the rumored changes to the trust, and the faction war that is pitting brother against brother, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We are digging deeper than anyone else to bring you the stories TLC refuses to air. You do not want to miss a single update as this house of cards begins to fall. To understand the war that is currently brewing, you have to understand the battlefield. Jim Bob Duggar holds all the titles: the land, the LLCs, the trusts, the commercial properties, and the used car lots. For years, he structured the family finances so that loyalty was the only currency that mattered. If you followed the rules, if you smiled for the cameras, and if you married who he approved of, you were taken care of. But loyalty doesn't pay the bills in a recession. And it certainly doesn't cover the millions of dollars lost in legal defense fees and canceled contracts. The foundational lie of the Duggar family was always, we share everything. It was a collective pot. But the reality is a strict hierarchy of inheritance, and we are investigating the very strong theory that the family is currently fracturing into warring factions. We are calling these groups the Loyalists, the Outcasts, and the Wild Cards. And right now, the Loyalists are shrinking. We are hearing Irmid insider reports that the atmosphere inside the big house is one of paranoia. The theory gaining traction is that Jim Bob is no longer looking for a successor to build the empire, but a successor to bury the bodies, figuratively speaking. He needs someone to manage the decline. For years, the assumption was that Josh was the heir apparent. He was the firstborn, the golden child. But with Josh removed from the board, a power vacuum has opened up that has turned the brothers against one another. This brings us to the business trips. If you have been tracking the family's movements, you have noticed a flurry of activity that doesn't make sense for a family that is supposed to be laying low. Jim Bob has been quietly selling off acres of property he spent decades acquiring. Why is a man obsessed with real estate suddenly liquidating his portfolio? We propose that this isn't downsizing. This is panic selling. This is asset liquidation to pay mounting legal fees and potentially to hide liquid cash in offshore accounts or untraceable assets before the empire fully collapses. We have reviewed public records that suggest a pattern of divestment. He is turning dirt into cash, and that cash is disappearing. The children, specifically the unmarried sons who are still under his roof, are starting to realize something terrifying. The money might not be there. This is a great betrayal. The realization that the family trust was essentially a Ponzi scheme. The children paid in their childhoods, they sacrificed their privacy, their autonomy, and their education, expecting a payout in adulthood. They were told that if they worked for the family business would work for them. But we reveal that the money likely isn't there anymore. It was spent on Josh's defense lawyers. It was spent on Jim Bob's failed political campaigns. It was spent keeping the lights on in a 55,000 square foot house that is hemorrhaging value. Let's talk about the Loyalists. Currently, this faction is led by Jedidiah. Jed has seemingly stepped into the role of the new golden child. He has the political ambitions, the car lot management role, and the unwavering loyalty to the patriarch. But this position has put a target on his back. We are hearing rumors of a massive rift between Jed and the other brothers, specifically the twins and the younger boys. Why? Because of a document that sources suggest has recently been altered. There is a smoking gun in this succession war, a change in the trust executor. Rumors are swirling through the grapevine in Northwest Arkansas that Josh has been officially disinherited in favor of a younger, more pliable son. If this document exists, and we have strong reason to believe it does, it is a declaration of war. It signals to the other children that their standing in the family is tied strictly to their utility to Jim Bob. Jed is useful. The others are becoming liabilities. This shift has created a toxic environment where siblings are essentially competing for scraps. They are realizing that there isn't enough inheritance to go around. It is a game of musical chairs, and the music has already stopped. This brings us to the overlooked protagonist of this saga, Jason Duggar. While everyone watches the famous daughters or the disgraced eldest son, Jason has been living in a treehouse, working construction, and staying largely silent. But his silence speaks volumes. Jason represents the Lost Boys faction. These are the young men who are waking up to a future where the TV money is gone and they have been left with nothing but a famous last name that is now a liability on a resume. Jason living in a literal treehouse isn't just a quirky architectural choice. It is a symbol of his displacement. He is on the property, but not in the house. He is close to the power, but excluded from the inner circle. We are hearing theories that Jason and a few of the younger brothers are quietly consulting with legal counsel, looking for a way to extract their earnings from the family pot before it is completely empty. Imagine the scene. A son suing his father for back wages for a childhood spent on reality television. It is the lawsuit that could finally expose the financial rot at the core of the ministry. But the threats aren't just coming from inside the house. There is an external threat that makes this probate war even more urgent. We are talking about the IRS. There has been speculation for years regarding the nonprofit status of their ministry and the blurry lines between family expenses and charitable giving. If the IRS launches a full-scale investigation into insurance, which is when nonprofit assets are used for personal enrichment, the tax bill alone could be catastrophic. We are talking about the potential seizure of the big house. This is why the panic selling is happening. The children aren't just fighting for an inheritance, they are fighting over a debt. They are terrified that when Jim Bob passes, they won't inherit an empire. They will inherit a forensic audit and a massive tax lien. This is the nightmare scenario that keeps the Lost Boys up at night. They know that Jed and the Loyalists will try to insulate themselves, leaving the others to hold the bag. The tension is exacerbated by the outcasts, Jill and Jinger. They have already walked away, but their shadow looms large. They proved that you can survive without the family money. However, for the sons who lack formal education and have only worked for Jim Bob, walking away feels like financial suicide. They are trapped. They are hostages to a fortune that might not even exist anymore. This creates a volatile environment where everyone is suspicious of everyone else. Who is leaking stories to the press? Who is secretly recording conversations? Who is meeting with publishers to write a tell-all? Jim Bob knows this. He is a master strategist. To keep the factions from uniting against him, he has to keep them fighting each other. We believe he is using the remaining assets as a carrot on a stick. He dangles a piece of land here, a used car lot title there, pitting brother against brother to ensure that no one challenges his authority. It is a classic divide and conquer strategy, but it is reaching a breaking point. The sons are growing up, they are getting married. They have wives who are asking difficult questions about where the money is coming from and where it is going. The wives are the wild cards in this succession war. They did not grow up with the same level of indoctrination as the Duggar children. They are looking at the finances with fresh eyes, and what they see is terrifying. We are hearing reports of secret meetings between some of the daughters-in-law, comparing notes, realizing that the promises made during courtship regarding financial security were smoke and mirrors. If the wives form an alliance, they could push their husbands to demand a full accounting of the family trust. And that is the one thing Jim Bob cannot afford. A full audit would reveal the extent of the depletion. It would reveal how much was really spent on the defense and how much was funneled into failed ventures. Let's go back to the theory of the scrap heap. What is actually left? We know about real estate, but the market is shifting. The commercial properties are aging. The flight and construction businesses are dependent on a local reputation that has been tarnished. The value of the Duggar brand is essentially zero, or perhaps negative. This means the only real value is in the hard assets, the land, the equipment, the bricks and mortar, And every time Jim Bob sells a parcel of land to pay a lawyer, the inheritance shrinks. The pie is getting smaller, but the hunger of the heirs is growing. We have received tips that a confrontation recently took place at the compound, a come to Jesus meeting where the younger boys demanded transparency regarding their trusts. Allegedly, Jim Bob shut them down, citing biblical authority and demanding unquestioning obedience. But the cracks are showing. You can't pay a mortgage with obedience. You can't buy groceries with a father's blessing. The economic reality is piercing the bubble of the cult of personality. Consider the role of the forgotten daughters, the younger girls who are still at home. They are watching their older sisters write books and give interviews. They are seeing the world open up for Jinger and Jill. They are realizing that their inheritance is being squandered to protect the reputation of a brother who is currently in prison. The resentment brewing in the girls' dormitory is likely palpable. They are the ones who will be left to care for the aging parents when the money runs out. They are the ones who will be stuck in the big house when the power gets cut off. The narrative we are seeing unfold is a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. It is King Lear in Arkansas. The old king is mad, demanding professions of love while he divides the kingdom based on vanity and fear. The loyalists like Jed are playing the part of the sycophants, hoping to secure the crown. The outcasts are the banished truth-tellers, and the lost boys are the tragic figures caught in the middle, realizing too late that the game was rigged from the start. But there is another layer to this onion. We need to talk about the offshore theory. It is a common tactic for families facing massive legal liability to move assets out of the reach of creditors. While we have no concrete proof, the pattern of liquidation fits the profile of someone moving cash. If Jim Bob is hiding money, who knows where it is? Does Jed know? If Jed holds the map to the buried treasure, that explains his sudden rise to power. It explains why the other brothers are looking at him with suspicion. It isn't just about favoritism, it's about being an accomplice. If Jed is helping Jim Bob hide assets from the IRS or from potential civil lawsuits, he is exposing himself to massive legal risk. This might be the leverage Jim Bob has over him. I go down, you go down. It is a mutually assured destruction pact disguised as a father-son business partnership. This dynamic changes the entire complexion of the succession war. It's not just about who gets the money, it's about who avoids jail time. As we continue to peel back the layers of this crumbling dynasty, remember that what we see on social media, the smiling photos, the family gatherings, is a mask. It is a carefully constructed facade designed to keep the creditors at bay and the faithful donating. But behind the closed doors of Tontitown, the knives are out. The alliances are shifting daily. The fear of poverty is replacing the fear of God. The fear of poverty is a powerful motivator, and it is currently reshaping the alliances within the Duggar family faster than any courtship ever could. We need to talk about the Anna problem. This is one of the most explosive elements of the current financial crisis, and it is the wedge that is driving the brothers apart. With Josh serving a decade-long sentence in federal prison, his wife Anna and their 7 children are reportedly entirely dependent on Jim Bob's finances. We are talking about a household of 8 people with 0 income generation, living in a warehouse on the property, consuming resources that the other working sons feel entitled to. According to exclusive theories from insiders close to the family, the resentment toward Anna is boiling over. It's not just about the money, it's about the principle. The brothers, specifically the lost boys like Jason, James, and Justin, spent their childhoods being policed by Josh. They were the victims of a double standard where Josh was protected and they were scrutinized. Now, as adults, they are waking up every day to go to work at construction sites or car lots, knowing that a significant chunk of the profit they generate is being siphoned off to support the family of the man who destroyed their reputation. They are effectively paying a Josh tax. Every time they sell a car, every time they flip a house, a percentage goes into the black hole of Josh's appeals and his family's upkeep. This is the friction point. The brothers are asking, why are we working to support him? Why is the inheritance being drained to keep his family afloat while we are struggling to start our own? This resentment is fueling the faction we call the wild cards. These are the middle and younger sons who have realized the game is rigged. They are looking at the math, and the math doesn't work. If Jim Bob is spending thousands a month on legal fees, commissary, and supporting Anna's household, plus maintaining the massive compound, plus flying planes, there is nothing being added to the pot. The pot is leaking. This is why we are seeing the business trips. Let's dig deeper into these land sales. We have tracked a pattern of divestment that is frankly alarming for a real estate mogul. Jim Bob isn't just selling off bad investments. He appears to be liquidating prime assets. We propose a theory that this is a strategic shell game. Jim Bob is smart enough to know that lawsuits are like vultures. They circle the biggest carcass. By liquidating real estate into cash, he can move that wealth into harder-to-trace vehicles. We are investigating the possibility of new LLCs formed under the names of the most loyal children, likely Jedidiah, to shield assets from future litigation. If the Mad Family Inc. entity is sued, but the money has already been moved to a Jedidiah Holdings LLC, the creditors get nothing. But this strategy requires absolute blind loyalty from the person holding the bag. And that brings us to the Jedidiah regime. Jed has effectively become the CEO of the crumbling empire. He is the enforcer. He is the one reportedly managing the car lots, the real estate listings, and the day-to-day operations. He has stepped into Josh's shoes, but he's wearing them differently. Josh was charismatic and arrogant. Jed is described as efficient and ruthless. He knows that his inheritance depends on protecting the pile, even if it means cutting off his siblings. We are hearing rumors of a loyalty contract, not a written document perhaps, but a verbal understanding. If you want access to the family equipment, the family contacts, or the family lines of credit, you answer to Jed. This has created a massive power imbalance. Imagine being an older brother or a brother of similar age and having to ask Jed for permission to use the excavator. Having to ask Jed for your cut of a deal. This dynamic is humiliating, and it is designed to break the will of the wild cards. It forces them to either submit to Jed's authority or leave with nothing. And leaving with nothing is a terrifying prospect because of the educational void. This is the tragedy of the Duggar sons. They were homeschooled with a curriculum designed to make them missionaries and politicians, not competitors in a modern economy. They lack accredited degrees. Their work history is entirely within the family bubble. If Jason or James walks away today, what is their resume? Reality TV star, canceled, an unlicensed contractor. They know they are unemployable in the corporate world. Jim Bob knows this too. He crippled their independence to ensure their loyalty. It is a golden handcuff scenario, except the gold is flaking off and revealing rusted iron. However, the dynamic shifted drastically with the departure of Jana Duggar. For years, Jana was the glue. She was the Cinderella, the stay-at-home daughter who managed the household, raised the younger kids, and kept the peace. Her recent marriage and move to Nebraska was a massive blow to the infrastructure of the big house. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a resignation. With Jana gone, the domestic labor force collapsed. Who cooks for the army? Who manages the homeschool schedule for the youngest girls? Who mediates the disputes? We theorize that the burden has now fallen on the lost girls, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, and Josie. These teenagers are now expected to fill the shoes of a woman in her 30s. We are hearing reports that the stress level inside the main house has skyrocketed since Jana left. The buffer is gone. Jim Bob and Michelle are dealing directly with the chaos of the younger children, and patience is wearing thin. This domestic chaos bleeds into the financial chaos. A disordered house leads to disordered thinking. The Jana factor also sets a dangerous precedent for the younger girls. They saw her wait and wait and wait, serving the family until her mid-30s. They are looking at that timeline and thinking, I'm not doing that. We predict an acceleration of courtships for the younger girls. They will marry the first man who offers them a ticket out of Tontitown. And this rush to the altar is dangerous for Jim Bob's bottom line because every wedding costs money and every son-in-law is a potential threat. A new husband asks questions. A new husband looks at the trust documents. A new husband might say, why is my wife's name on a tax return for a business she doesn't see a dime from? This is the insurance threat we touched on earlier, but let's look at the mechanics of it. To maintain tax-exempt status for a religious organization, the assets cannot be used for the personal benefit of the directors. But if the family home is the church, and the family cars are ministry vehicles, and the family plane is for mission trips that look suspiciously like vacations, the line is blurred to the point of invisibility. The younger generation is realizing that they are walking through tax violations. If the IRS audits the family, the children whose names are on these LLCs and boards could be liable. They could be on the hook for back taxes and penalties for money they never even spent. This is the nightmare scenario for the outcasts like Jill and Jinger, but also for the fence sitters. They are realizing that their signature is on documents they didn't read. Jim Bob has a history of putting assets in his children's names. It looked like generosity. Now it looks like liability shifting. Here, son, you own this house. But if that house has a lien on it, or if that house was purchased with funds that weren't properly taxed, the son is the one in the crosshairs. The succession war isn't just about fighting for assets. It is about fighting to get your name off the books. It is a race to divest before the audit hits. We are watching a slow-motion implosion of trust. The Ponzi scheme of emotional investment has crashed. The children were told that if they followed the rules, they would have the perfect life. But look around. Josh is in prison. The show is dead. The public mocks them. The money is dwindling. The promise was a lie. This realization is causing what we call the theological fracture. The loyalists like Jed still cling to the Institute and Basic Life Principles, IBLP teachings, because it legitimizes their power. If the father is the ultimate authority, then Jed, as the father's proxy, is untouchable. But the wild cards and outcasts are deconstructing. They see that theology was used as a tool for financial control. When you stop believing that your father speaks for God, you start asking why he controls your bank account. This brings us to the Jason rebellion. Why is Jason living in a treehouse? It's easy to dismiss it as a quirky content play for social media, but look closer. A treehouse is a separate dwelling. It is a physical detachment from the main house. It has a lock. It is a space Jim Bob cannot easily monitor. We believe Jason is building a lifeboat. He is using the family resources, the land, the tools, the materials to build his own independence right under their noses. It is a subtle act of defiance. He isn't asking for a house. He is building one. And by doing so, he is proving he doesn't need Jim Bob's permission to exist. But the most dangerous player in this game might be the one we hear the least from, the spouses. The sons-in-law and daughters-in-law. They are the whisper network. Austin Forsyth, Jeremy Vuolo, Derek Dillard, they all talk, they compare notes, they know the discrepancies. And now, the newer spouses, Justin's wife Claire, Jeremiah's wife Hannah, are joining this network. They are outsiders looking in, and they spot the dysfunction immediately. We have a theory that a class action mindset is forming among the siblings. Not a formal lawsuit yet, but a collective bargaining agreement. If the wild cards band together, Jason, James, Jackson, perhaps even joined by some of the married brothers like Josiah, they could confront Jim Bob with a unified front. Open the books, or we walk. We stop the work. We stop the filming for social media. We stop making appearances. Jim Bob relies on their free labor. The Duggar economy is built on the exploitation of his children's work. Construction, car repair, property management, childcare, it's all done in-house. If that labor force goes on strike, the expenses skyrocket. He would have to hire outside contractors at market rates, which he cannot afford. The children have leverage, but only if they realize it. The tragedy is that they have been conditioned to believe they are powerless. This is where psychological warfare comes in. Jim Bob is reportedly a master of triangulation. He tells one son that another son is talking behind his back. He praises one daughter-in-law to make another feel inadequate. He creates an atmosphere of competition, so they fight each other instead of him. Jed is doing such a good job. Why can't you be more like Jed? This keeps them scrambling for his approval, distracted from the reality that the prize, the inheritance, is evaporating. Let's talk about the media pivot. With TLC gone, the family has tried to pivot to YouTube and Instagram influencers, but this is failing. Why? Because the audience has turned. The comment sections are not filled with adoring fans anymore. They are filled with critics and sleuths. This means the ad revenue is nowhere near what the TV contracts paid. They are trading dollars for pennies. Yet Jim Bob seemingly demands a cut of this too. We've heard reports that even adult children's social media deals are subject to the family tithe. Imagine making a few $1,000s on a sponsored post only to have your father demand 20% for management fees. This is squeezing blood from a stone. The desperation is palpable. We are seeing more grifting behavior, Amazon wish lists, relentless product links, asking for donations. This is not the behavior of a wealthy dynasty. It is the behavior of a family on the brink. And this public begging is humiliating for the younger sons who are trying to present themselves as manly providers. It emasculates them. It creates shame, and shame turns into anger. There is also the Arkansas politics angle. Jim Bob used to be a kingmaker in local politics. He had influence. That is gone. He is now a pariah. This loss of political cover is dangerous. Zoning laws they used to ignore might suddenly be enforced. Tax loopholes they used to exploit might be closed. The local authorities are no longer looking the other way. They are looking closely. We believe there is a ticking clock on a zoning violation or a code enforcement action that could cost the family millions in fines or forced renovations. Specifically, the warehouse where Anna lives. Is it coded for residential use? Does it have the proper permits for that many occupants? If not, the county could shut it down, forcing Jim Bob to move Anna and the 7 kids into the big house. Imagine that pressure cooker. Anna and her 7 children move into the main quarters with Michelle and the Lost Girls. The overcrowding would be instantaneous. The noise, the chaos, the friction, it would be the catalyst for the final explosion. We also need to consider the NDA theory. It has long been rumored that the children are forced to sign non-disclosure agreements to receive any financial help. But NDAs are tricky things. They can be broken if illegal activity is involved. And they require consideration, meaning you have to get paid for the NDA to be valid. If the money runs out, the NDAs might become void. This is Jim Bob's greatest fear. If the checks bounce, the secrets come out. What secrets? We aren't just talking about the past scandals. We are talking about the financial maneuvering happening right now, the cash transfers, the gifts that avoid gift tax, the structured deposits. If a son like Jason or James decides to speak to a forensic accountant, the whole house of cards falls down. And don't forget the Hollywood element. There are always rumors of a documentary crew sniffing around, not for a puff piece, but for a LuLaRich-style expose. If a streamer like Netflix or Amazon Prime offers a lost boy $1 million to tell the unvarnished truth, do you think loyalty will hold? When you are living in a treehouse and your brother is in federal prison, $1 million looks like salvation. We predict that within the next 12 to 24 months, one of the sons will break rank. Not just a soft exit like Jinger, but a hard burning bridge exit. The battle lines are drawn. On one side, the loyalists, Jim Bob, Michelle, Jedidiah, and the dependent spouses who are too afraid to move. They hold the keys, but they are trapped in the castle. On the other side, the outcasts, Jill, Jinger, and their husbands, watching from a safe distance, vindicated but scared. And in the middle, the most volatile group, the wild cards, the sons who are waking up, the sons who have muscles, skills, and growing resentment. They are the ones who can physically dismantle the empire. They built the houses. They know where the foundations are weak. As we move into the final analysis of this saga, we have to ask, what happens when the patriarch dies? If Jim Bob were to pass away tomorrow, the chaos would be absolute. There is likely no clear will that satisfies everyone. There are likely competing documents. There are the shell companies. We are looking at a probate battle that could drag on for a decade, draining every last cent until the lawyers are the only ones who get paid. But before we get to the end game, we have to look at the hidden assets. There is a persistent theory about the flight logs. The Duggars own private aircraft. They fly frequently. We have tracked flights to locations that don't seem to correlate with ministry work. Are these trips to move physical assets? Gold? Cash? It sounds like a movie plot, but when you are dealing with a family that operates entirely in cash and demands total secrecy, nothing is off the table. We are witnessing the frantic final act of a tragedy. The characters are tired, the plot is twisting, and the audience, you, are the jury. The verdict hasn't been read yet, but the evidence is piling up. The succession war isn't coming, it is here. It is happening in the silence between the Instagram posts. It is happening in the lawyers' offices in Fayetteville. It is happening in the treehouse. The silence in Tontitown is deafening, but do not mistake silence for peace. It is calm before the artillery fire. As we enter the final chapter of this investigation, we have to talk about the nuclear option, the one card that the disgruntled sons, the wild cards, haven't played yet, but are reportedly keeping in their back pocket. It is the threat of the whistleblower. We aren't talking about a tell-all book anymore. Books are soft power. We are talking about the IRS Whistleblower Informant Award Program. This is a very real, very lucrative federal program where an individual who reports tax evasion can receive up to 30% of the collected proceeds. Think about the math. If the Duggar estate has avoided millions in taxes through questionable nonprofit loopholes and asset hiding, the penalty could be tens of millions. A 30% cut of that is not just get out of debt money. It is start a new life in a new identity money. This is the sword of Damocles hanging over Jim Bob's head. Every time he mistreats a son-in-law, every time he shortchanges a son on a construction deal, he is gambling that they won't make that phone call. But loyalty is a finite resource and desperation is infinite. We have heard whispers that at least one disgruntled family member has already made inquiries with tax attorneys regarding the process of reporting insurance in a religious nonprofit. If this is true, the fuse is already lit. Let's analyze the blackmail archive theory. Why hasn't anyone flipped yet? Why do the sons who are living in poverty near the compound still show up for family night? We propose the theory of mutually assured destruction. For nearly 20 years, cameras were rolling, but not everything aired. There are thousands of hours of footage that never made it to TLC, confessionals, hot mic moments, arguments, and admissions. Who owns that footage? Who owns the servers? If Jim Bob negotiated ownership of the raw footage or had copies of the cutting room floor material, he possessed a vault of digital leverage. He knows every secret his children have. He knows the things they said when they thought no one was listening. This compromat archive serves as the ultimate leash. The children know that if they go public with the financial abuse, Jim Bob could leak embarrassing or damaging footage that would ruin their own reputations or marriages. It is a standoff. He holds their past hostage. They hold his future hostage. But the weak link in this chain is the in-laws. They aren't on those tapes. Jim Bob has no leverage over a son-in-law like Derek or a daughter-in-law who entered the family after the show was canceled. This is why the outcasts are the most dangerous faction. They have nothing to lose. They have already been shunned. They are immune to the social pressure of the cult. And they are the ones who are reportedly urging the siblings still inside to document everything. Take pictures of the ledgers, record the meetings, save the text messages. We are seeing the formation of a shadow archive. While Jim Bob shreds documents, the children are creating a digital paper trail. This is the modern warfare of probate litigation. It's not fought with swords, it's fought with screenshots. Now look at the mother's betrayal. Where is Michelle in all of this? The public narrative is that she is the submissive wife, blindly following her husband, but our investigation suggests a more complex dynamic. We theorize that Michelle is the gatekeeper of the trust. She is the one who maintains the emotional manipulation. When the sons get angry at Jim Bob about money, it is Michelle who guilt trips them. How can you do this to your father after all he's done for you? She weaponizes the mother-son bond to protect the assets. But we are hearing rumors that her health is becoming a factor. The stress of the scandals, the imprisonment of her firstborn, and the fracturing of her family is taking a toll. If Michelle were to step back or if she were to pass away before Jim Bob, the emotional glue would dissolve instantly. The boys don't fear Jim Bob. They tolerate him. They love their mother. Without her as the buffer, the aggression toward the patriarch would be unchecked. Let's return to the big house itself. The sheer economics of that property are a disaster. 55,000 square feet of steel and concrete. It is not a home, it is a commercial facility. Who buys that? If they have to sell, the buyer pool is non-existent. It's too weird for a residence, too poorly zoned for a hotel. It is a stranded asset. This means the inheritance the children are fighting over is largely illiquid. You can't eat a steel beam. You can't pay rent with a section of an industrial kitchen. This leads to the fire sale theory. We predict that in the next 18 months, we will see the family attempting to auction off the physical contents of the empire. The fleet of vehicles, the heavy machinery, the buses, the planes. It will be presented as downsizing for ministry focus. But we know the truth. It is a liquidation event. And when the auction gavel falls, Watch who buys the items. If it's shell companies connected to Jed, you know the fraud is ongoing. If it's strangers, you know the collapse is final. There is also the custody proxy war. We have to talk about the M word, custody. If any of the couples within the wild card faction divorce, and statistically given the pressure they are under and the rushed nature of their marriages, it is a possibility. The divorce proceedings would open the financial books. In a battle for child support and alimony, a judge can order a discovery phase. This would force the production of tax returns, trust fund documents, and bank statements. Jim Bob is terrified of a Duggar divorce, not just for religious reasons, but for forensic reasons. A divorce lawyer subpoenaing the family trust is the Trojan horse that destroys the castle. This is why the family exerts such extreme pressure to keep marriages together, no matter how toxic. They aren't just saving a marriage, they are saving the spreadsheet. We also have to consider the life rights contract. There is a dark theory circulating among industry insiders that Jim Bob may have signed contracts that grant him the rights to his children's stories in perpetuity. Meaning, if Jason wants to write a book, Jim Bob might legally own the copyright to Jason's life story. If this is true, it is a form of intellectual property slavery. It would explain why so many of them have remained silent. They might be legally gagged, not by an NDA, but by a rights assignment they signed when they were minors. However, contracts signed by minors are often voidable. This is the legal battleground of the future. A judge deciding whether a father can own his children's biographies. If a court strikes that down, the floodgates open. Every child becomes a content creator, and the monopoly of the Duggar brand shatters into 19 competing narratives. The brand is already toxic, but it is about to become radioactive. We are tracking the Christian influencer circuit. The Duggars used to be royalty at these conferences. Now they are radioactive. Other families are distancing themselves. The Bates family, for example, has quietly untangled their brand from the Duggars. This isolation accelerates the cash flow crisis. They are losing their ecosystem. They are alone on an island of their own making. What about the grandchild economy? This is the saddest part of the saga. Access to the grandchildren is being used as currency. We believe that Jim Bob rewards the children who bring the grandkids to the big house for photo ops. If you let him post a picture of your baby to prove family unity, you might get your car fixed for free. If you withhold the grandchildren, you get cut off. The children are literally trading the privacy of the next generation for basic necessities. It is a cycle of exploitation that is repeating itself in real time. But the grandkids are getting older. The McKinseys and Michaels are entering their teens. They have smartphones, they have internet access, they are reading the comments, they are reading the court transcripts. The grandchild rebellion is the sequel to this war, and it will be fought by a generation that owes Jim Bob nothing. They didn't sign the contracts, they didn't choose TV life. They are the collateral damage, and they will likely be the fiercest critics. As we look toward the horizon, we see a Tontitown ghost town. The most likely outcome isn't a dramatic explosion, but a slow, painful withering. The money runs out. The lights in the big house are turned off section by section to save electricity. The lawn goes unmowed. The rusting equipment in the yard is sold for scrap. Jim Bob, an old man wandering the halls of a kingdom that no one wants, clutching titles to land that has been leaned by the state. The loyalists like Jed will eventually turn. When the money is truly gone, loyalty evaporates. Jed will have to look out for his own wife and children. He will have to cut the cord. And that final betrayal, the Brutus moment, will be the end of Jim Bob Duggar. He structured his life around control, believing money bought loyalty. He is about to learn that money only rents loyalty, and the lease is up. The investigation is ongoing. We are currently digging into the Arkansas Shell Company registry, looking for the new LLCs. We are tracking the flight paths of the family planes. We are monitoring the court dockets for the inevitable lawsuits. You need to be here when the news breaks. You need to be subscribed because the mainstream media has moved on. They think the story is over because the show is canceled. We know the story is just beginning. The cameras are off, but the knives are out. The final episode of the Duggar saga won't be on TLC. It will be in a courtroom. It will be in a bankruptcy filing. It will be in a police report. Don't let them hide the truth. We are the watchers. We are the archivists of the collapse. Hit that bell icon. Share this video to keep the algorithm from burying the truth. Leave a comment below with your theory. Who will be the first son to sue Jim Bob? Will it be Jason, James, or will Jed turn on his master? The empire is crumbling. Grab your popcorn. The succession war has begun.